All right, so welcome to Humanizing Your Online and Virtual Courses. Is anyone feeling like they're having trouble with this right now? Maybe some people, yeah. So
It's interesting talking to black boxes.
yeah, that is, I've heard from a lot of people that's a big challenge. But sometimes online we don't feel safe enough to have our video on. And I don't mean like physically safe. I just mean like I I'm presenting right now and I cannot stand to have my video on the screen. Like it makes me even more nervous to see myself talking. So I have to hide speaker view so I can't see myself. But then sometimes I'm in other meetings with other colleagues. Like I'm part of some external organizations too, and sometimes I don't want my video on. Like people that I don't really know are seeing like my house or whatever the reason is. So we'll talk a little bit today about this first thing here. We need to create like this welcoming learning environment. And we do this in our classroom. We do this every semester when we have our students face to face, right? We get to know them and we make them feel safe in our classroom. But how can we do this online, build that sense of community and establish safety early on in the course in the online classroom? Like that's the harder part, I think, is like really the hard part is like, how do we do that in an online classroom? So here's some ideas. You can create a warm welcome. So doing this through video is usually the best. Some research actually shows that students actually enjoy it more when you just record from your phone and it's kind of like an imperfect video. Like you're kind of stumbling on your words or you're making mistakes or you have those like, you know, where you're thinking. They feel that it makes it more human. Like when they're looking at you in the video, they can actually feel and get a sense of like what your personality is actually like.
Oh, then I got that one nailed.
Good job, Mike. Another thing is really to set ground rules. And this is not really in the way that is like, thou shalt not, blah, 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 right? When setting ground rules in the online classroom, we want to think more in more of a positive light. So really kind of boiling down, what do I expect from them in the course? But also, what can they expect from me? That's also really important, right? So they can expect me, I expect them to hand things in on time. They can expect from me that they will get their stuff back in a timely manner. And I try to give them a timeline. Like I'll usually have it back to you within a week. If it's an essay, it'll be 2 weeks. I try to give them like, they can expect to have that feedback relatively as quickly as I'm able to. Then you can also ask them to kind of talk about what kind of ground rules would they expect from their peers so that they're all on the same page. Another thing is you always engage the students in community building, even if this is only, you know, a couple things that you do in your online class. So if you have some synchronous sessions, it's really valuable to put them into breakout rooms to kind of get to know each other. You can give them an activity to do. It can be something related to content, but instead of having them share all together on the screen, because as we already talked about, some people are not comfortable having their cameras on, but then when they're put into breakout rooms and they're only with 2 or 3 other people, they tend to open up a little bit more. They talk more. Some of them will turn their camera on because now they're only in a room with 2 or 3 other people. Another thing that I've seen faculty do is include a diversity and inclusion statement. So saying they share like their pronouns to make that okay for other students to share their pronouns. They talk about, including and respecting other cultures in the classroom. So those types of things are other things that I've seen faculty include. I've seen some faculty also include land acknowledgement statements right on their landing page in Moodle, which allows students to see that that is an important component of their course because it's up near the top of the Moodle page. Another thing that this is my first time teaching 100% online for Cambrian, something new I did this year, but I did one-on-one optional meet and greets with all 40 of my students. And it was time consuming, but it was so valuable. I think most of my students took me up on that opportunity. but I was able to meet them, get an idea of who they are. I was able to also gauge a little bit of their needs. So some of the students that I felt were maybe a little bit higher need, then I was able to make a note that I would check in on them a little bit more often than I would some of the other students that seemed more self-directed and independent learners. I think going forward, the one thing I learned is that I will likely try to do, I would likely try to do small groups instead of the one-on-one coming in the winter semester. I think that to meet all of my students one-on-one in just like a 15-minute window took quite some time. So maybe to help build community in the classroom, I would likely have them in small groups, maybe only 3 people plus me, and I'd have them sign up for those 15-minute or half an hour blocks. And it was optional. The students didn't have to, but a lot of the students did actually want to meet me, which I thought was kind of cool. So another thing is I'm going to actually have us, I'm going to stop share for a second. I'm actually going to have you go into breakout rooms. I'm just going to give you 5 or 10 minutes and to discuss, first of all, you're going to talk about to know each other. Some of us might not know each other. Talk about what's your favorite thing about teaching? Like, let's start off on a positive thing. What's your favorite thing about teaching? Especially during the pandemic. What's your favorite thing about teaching during the pandemic? And then discuss maybe with your peers in your little group, talk about what are some of the guidelines that you would want in a format like this. So it's going to be small groups, but that's okay. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. And then when we come back, Megan, I will answer the question that you put in the chat, okay? All right. You all came back smiling, so I feel like I missed something.
I was laughing because I was mid-sentence.
Yeah, me too.
We cut Sean off too.
Yeah. Finish what you're saying, Megan.
Oh, I was just going to say with all of the black boxes, at least it's the ones who are engaging are the ones who want to engage. So my classes are actually going much faster. Not necessarily that's a good thing, but the ones who are asking questions ask questions. The other ones don't, because they're probably not even sitting in front of their computer anyway. So I'm fine with that.
Just because there's a black screen though, doesn't mean that they're not paying attention. But yes, I know I've seen in another course where a faculty member really engages students using like the reactions in Zoom. So like, you know, if you're talking about something and you're like, okay, so if, you know, any kind of question about your content, right? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up if you're still with me. I need to know, you know, and then people can use the reactions. And then when you don't see the reactions, you're like, okay, so you kind of get who's listening and who's not. Mike, I see you not listening down there.
What was that? I'm sorry.
But, you know, and then other things too, is you can ask them to comment in the chat. So, you know, you can say to students like, so what's one takeaway? Use one word. What would be your ground rule? What would be your one word? And then have them type it in the chat. And then you'll kind of get a running list of what's, you know, like who's paying attention and who's listening. So sometimes the student who has their camera off is actually super engaged. And it's the one that has their camera on that's really looking at Facebook on their, not Facebook. Students don't use Facebook anymore. That's what they tell me. I'm old. Anyway. I don't know, Megan, I put a little bit of an answer in the chat, but I didn't know if you'd be able to see it because you guys were in breakout rooms. But Megan's question was just about like, do you have any advice for people like me who are generally not touchy-feely type people? I dislike icebreakers personally, so I avoid them as a teacher. I just introduce myself and get started. I'm kind of with you on that. Sometimes like I've done icebreakers where like my teacher's saying to me, tell us your favorite ice cream and how that reflects your personality. And I'm like, like, I don't even know what to say to that. Right. So if you're not really into like icebreakers, I know some students give feedback that they're not really into those kind of lame kind of icebreakers either. My suggestion is to like start with your content right from the get-go. But then as soon as you can, break them into small groups and have them working on content together. They will start to talk to one another when they're in those groups. So, you know, I would say to students, maybe in the first few times actually that I'm doing this with them, is I would say, Okay, I'm going to put you into small breakout rooms. What I'd like you to do is at least introduce yourself to your peers in your room. And then I would like you to solve this math equation together, whatever it is, right? I don't know, math equation. I don't even know if you can solve a math equation collaboratively.
And that is my entire problem with breakout rooms.
Not a math person over here. I was like, I know Megan teaches math, so she maybe get
Good
it.
try. Good try. But yeah, I just, so many things that people talk about that work for them. It's like, oh, that's a great idea, but I don't think that will work for math. But
Oh no, it's so much better because there's more fingers to hold up. Oh, wait, mine are disappearing.
I know with I was watching a woman who was talking about STEM, like using it in STEM, and talking about using it for equations, but having students then share how they solved. And then if they all have the same answer, that's cool. And then sharing with each other how they got to the end result. But then also if each of them had a different answer, or if there was some conflicting answers, they have to work through it together. So there's some, I don't know, there's some ideas I think you have to get really creative. I know in English, I'd probably have to get really creative too, like how to get them to write together. How do I get them to write collaboratively? How do I get them to write together and give good feedback in a breakout room? And share the answers in the chat. Yeah, for sure. And then they could, you could have whoever thinks 7 is the right answer. I want you to share how you got there. And then you could, have them share and work through it. And then you do have to be creative. I'm not going to say it's going to be always easy, but you have to be creative for sure. All right, I'm going to go back here and share my screen for a second. So here's another thing. There is really 2 types of online learning. So who controls this? We do as the instructor. So we want to think about, do we want to give our students the McDonald's drive-through experience, or do we want to give them like the dinner party version, right? I saw this, I can't take complete credit for this because I did see it in another presentation, but when I look at this drive-through type of online learning, I think about it being fast, right? So and I'm not just fast, but something I can hurry up and get through the content. It was really fast and easy for me to create, as the instructor. I think of McDonald's as cheap, right? Their tuition's not cheap, but the content's cheap, right? The content that they're getting. There's no need in the drive-through to get out of your vehicle, which to me it signals that students don't have to get out of the LMS, right? They're in their seat, they're in their chair at their desk. There's little flavor in the food, no variety, right? Everything really to me at McDonald's tastes the same, gross. But so there's really no flavor to like maybe the content that students are getting. Very little social interaction. Like here, it's only between really the driver and then the attendant at the window.
Oh, there's a problem here.
Yep.
The driver's not the one doing it. Someone's gone the wrong way in the drive-through here because that's the passenger side.
You know what? This could be Thailand or Japan, where they drive on the opposite side of the road.
Oh, it could be, yeah.
And then the other thing is garbage that's tossed out at the end. So you have like the disposable containers. They just get rid of the content, get rid of your garbage, and students move on, right? Whereas I look at the dinner party as something that's a little bit of a slower pace. It does take longer to create quality online experiences. Absolutely. It's a more expensive meal. So you're putting more money you're putting in more time and more effort into creating this environment for the people at your dinner party. The food is packed with flavor. So your content is packed with flavor. There's lots of opportunity for social interaction. So these people at this dinner party can interact one-on-one with each other, or in small groups, or in the large group. I love here too that they're having like a communal celebration. How often do we have those communal celebrations in our in-person class, right? If it's someone's birthday, or, if someone shares something really exciting and we all like, yay, we all clap and we're excited for them. When do we see those happening in an online class? Not very often. Reusable dishes. This is the content that they're going to keep, and they're going to keep coming back to, not stuff that they're just going to toss out. And then opportunity to have leftovers. right? So there's always the opportunity for them to be able to use that content that they're learning in other contexts beyond the course. That is such a deep analogy. The drive-through versus the dinner party. I loved it. So I kind of took it from her to use. And then I leave you with this question: which experience would you prefer out of those two? I don't know. I don't really know too many people that would prefer the McDonald's version. So Liz says, in my one course, I'm developing activities so they can take elements of the activity that can be ported into the assignment. Oh, that's a great idea, Liz. Did you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what I decided to do is just focus on one course right now and see if it's beneficial to the students. So I've redone all my activities. It's taken a fair amount of time, but I've redone all my activities. So there are elements of their assignment actually built into the activity. And I use it as kind of like a reinforcer. And I say to them, if you show up in class today, we're going to do an activity and you're going to be able to answer question 2 of this assignment, because you're going to be able to port that information from the activity right into the assignment and not redo the work. And I noticed that my numbers are going up in that class because I think the word is getting out there that if you come to class, you're going to be able to do your assignment in class.
Yeah, no, it's good because you're having something that's active and they're actively engaged, and then something that they can add to their assignment. That's great.
Yeah.
So especially if they're getting feedback, right? They're getting the feedback that helps them to perform better on the assignment too.
And you're able to work on it as a group, right? Because it's a group activity.
Yep.
So there are elements of the assignment, of course, that they have to do independently, but I built in group aspects of it so that they can discuss it as a team, as a group of students.
Yeah, that's great, Liz. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
The next thing I have here is connected relationships are the key to supporting the success of students. We already know this in the classroom. We do this every time we have our students face to face. But here's the real kicker. It's also online too, right? So being connected to your students and having those really great relationships and rapport with the students, even in the online environment, is what will help them to be successful. You'll see more approachable. They'll feel comfortable coming to you for help. I mean, that's a generalization. You're always going to have the student who's like, they don't interrupt you. They want to bother you, or they don't feel comfortable emailing you. But for the most part, if we can make our students feel safe and comfortable in our online classes, they will come to us. This is a definition of what is humanizing learning. And this was taken from Michelle Pacansky-Brock. And it was just too good for me to just disseminate it down into like a couple things. So I put the whole thing on here, even though I know this totally goes against slide deck etiquette to have way too many words. But I like here what she says, and she has some of the research here to have background for why she says this. But so students often feel isolated, which can decrease motivation and increase attrition. And I think we're seeing that. We saw that even last semester, right? The pandemic hit and we just had some students that couldn't do it. They couldn't stay engaged. So when learning occurs entirely through a computer, an important part of the instructor's role is ensuring the learning environment is people focused. So that's up to us. That's the humanizing portion of it. So students actually do want to see us. They already know when they come in that the college has hired us as content or subject matter experts. They already know that. We can talk about our experiences, but what they really want to see from us is they want to see that they feel part of the larger learning community in the classroom. And sometimes they're not used to this because this might be something new to them, depending on teachers that they've had in the past. Being part of a learning community. But they are more likely to then be motivated. They're going to be more satisfied with their learning, and they will succeed in achieving the course objectives. So some of the things that we want to do in humanizing the online learning in our courses is to integrate learners' voices. We want to engage students in the active construction of knowledge, so not just passively giving it to them. We want them to actively construct that knowledge, to foster emotional connections between us and the students and between the students, and provide students with choices where we can. Ultimately, humanized learning increases the relevance of content to learners and improves their motivation to log in week after week. So I loved her, like her dissemination of all this research and like putting it all together. And it really highlighted so many things. It was hard to kind of just put it into like a few bullet points. So this was taken from an infographic that she made on how to humanize online learning. So the thing is, where do I start? So we need to start really with thinking about facilitation. How am I going to facilitate my course? So the first thing we want to look at is presence. So how do you create presence in your classroom, your online classroom more specifically? So one thing is, don't be a robot. So if all they ever see of you is, the odd written text, and they hardly even see you in the course, like you're not engaging and stuff in the course, we want them to know that you're a real live human person, right? So create, we talked about the welcome video, create that welcome video with all the ums and all the, the imperfections of talking on the spot. Try and provide feedback in audio format or video format. Greet the students with a video each week. Pacansky-Brock kind of deems this called the video postcard. I took a course it'd probably be about 8 years ago. It was before I had my kids. And it was the first time I'd ever had a professor do this. So every week she would say, hey, welcome to week 6. And wherever she was, she would just sometimes she was at home. Sometimes she was out for a walk, or sometimes she was at the gas station waiting for her husband to pay for gas. And she would just take a little quick postcard video just to welcome the week, say what we're going to be learning about, kind of just jump in a little bit. And it's the one thing, I don't even remember what the course was called. I don't even remember what I learned in the course, but that's what I remember. I remember that she made it a point every single week to welcome us to the week and let us know what was going to happen in that video. She even came at us from the beach. She was on vacation in like the Caribbean somewhere. And she's like, okay, here I am on vacation. Welcome to week 8 or whatever it was. So like those little touch points, students remember them like that. Like I said, that's all I remember about that course. I don't even know what it was. And then another thing is to offer some synchronous meetings for students that might need that. So, I mean, I know that we always offer this, but then sometimes it's important for us to reach out to students where we're like, I haven't seen you in the last few weeks. Can we please meet up and have a conversation about what's going on? If you see students are struggling, the same kind of thing, like reaching out and saying, hey, I saw that you were struggling with the last application activity. Would you like to have a chat about it? You can at least open up the communication. If they take it, awesome. And if not, that's okay too. Maybe they're just having an off day. The next thing is empathy. I'm sure that you've heard lots about empathy, considering like the pandemic and be more empathetic. But really what we want to do is we want to just sense where students need the extra support. So oftentimes when we teach a course over and over again, we kind of know where a majority of the class is going to need more help because we've kind of seen those patterns over the years. But it's often a little bit more difficult if you're teaching online for the first time, especially because you have to look for other indicators. So you have to go into like your Moodle logs and see who's logging in, who's viewing what. I went into my Moodle shell and I can see who basically only opened up the assignment description and submitted an assignment. They didn't look at the content. So like I can reach out to them and just be like, hey, how come you didn't check out the content? And sometimes they'll be like, because I already knew what to do. And I'm like, okay. And they did fine on their assignment, which is awesome. But if not, then sometimes I'll reroute them, go back, let's talk about the content. And then they can go back. I can have them go back and redo the assignment if it's a really bad mark. Support students through difficult times. So sometimes students like right now they're having a difficult time. So we can support them the best we can, whether it's a death in the family, just like we do in person, we give them extensions if we can. Another thing is send a supportive video message to a student just to say, hey, I know you're going through a hard time, thinking about you, reach out if you need any help with the course or whatever. And then the last piece here is awareness. So just really know your students. So in the first week, Jess O'Reilly shared before in another PD session, I think it was last year, about a learner preference survey that she created to ask students a series of questions in the first week about who they are as students, what they're expecting from the course, and some other key information that she felt would help her to deliver her course. And I know a lot of faculty have adopted that same kind of quiz or that same Microsoft form. So really get to know your students and who needs the extra help. You know, one question you might want to ask is, do they identify as first generation? First generation students often don't have someone that they can go to or that they know to help them along with stuff for post-secondary, because they don't know anyone who's been to post-secondary. You also want to build some other kind of fun, low risk community engagement. So again, so students can kind of talk and get to know each other, but then also like they can be working on content at the same time. And then another thing is be a warm demander. This is a really, sometimes it's a hard thing. We want to demand that our students, you know, submit our stuff on time and whatnot. But when I'm talking about a warm demander, I'm talking about telling them like, I know you can do this. I know you can problem solve this. I know that this seems like a lot of work right now. I know and I trust that you can get this done, right? Like, even if students keep coming to you and asking, like if they're asking for help, the first time, if you think that they know, they should be able to know where to locate the information, you know, sometimes I'll say to students, well, this is in the assignment description, go back and read that. And if you still don't understand, then come back to me, right? I know you can do this, you know, like giving them that kind of like pat on the back. I know you can do this, right? Rah, rah. And then the next thing is, it really goes hand in hand with backward design. So like when we're creating our in-person courses, we have some things that we need to consider. So like our outcomes and our assessments and our content and things like that. But we also have course design considerations for the online environment that we need to kind of keep in mind. So the first one here is choice. So where in our courses can we give students a little bit of choice? So for example, topics, sometimes you can give them choices on topics. Sometimes you can give them choices on the format, the way that they're going to hand it into you. So like, I know for my critical thinking course, I had students choose their own topic and then I had them submit their final product in any format. I don't care. And this, it should have seen the students, they were like, really? Like any format? And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Audio, video, written, it could be even visual. I had some students do infographics. I had other do a painting, like a mixed media painting thing. And so it was really interesting to see like that they kind of got out of the traditional text box and they kind of went beyond that. And like I said, choice is not, sometimes we can't give them the choice and format to submit, right? So kind of giving them choice where you're able to will help. So involve students in the decision making. So give them kind of some of the control, right? So how do they want to be assessed for a certain outcome? Is there an outcome in your course that you could leave up to them to figure out how they would like to be assessed and what that grading criteria would look like? Challenge, get students out of their comfort zone. That goes hand in hand with that warm demander. I know you can do this. I know you can do this. It's going to be challenging, but you can do it. Another thing, constructing meaning. So having students discover real world connections. So sometimes I'll ask students, like I'll tell them, for example, I teach them about logical fallacies, which is kind of like finding fault in something like a piece of media. So then what I do is I list in a Padlet all the different types of fallacies and I have them, they have to find one example for each in the real world, news, media, whatever. So they have to construct that meaning themselves. And then the other thing is collaboration. So where can you capitalize on collaboration in your course? It's not to say that collaboration for everything. It's not to say that they have to construct meaning and construct content for everything. You have to kind of pick and choose what you think is going to work for yourself in your own course. So then I did put up some resources here that I use. So Michelle Pacansky-Brock is kind of like the expert in humanizing learning. So I got a lot of stuff from her. I actually watched her do a presentation at TESS last week, which was really awesome. And then Jess O'Reilly, when she was part of the Hub, created a Designing Online Learning mini course. And she also created Delivering That Online Learning mini course. So those two courses are linked here that we have, like they're built in within Moodle.